Hello and welcome to SoftPeak. SoftPeak is a domain I've been sitting around with for quite some time, and I had the idea to share some of my lessons learned and some concepts I've been picking up here and there. And I had this domain called softpeak.com. I've been sitting around with this domain for many, many years, maybe 20 odd years or something like that. And I wanted to create a space or a channel or an outlet around how to work smarter, how to be more efficient, and how to leverage some of the superpowers out there to give you more time to do whatever you want with, basically. So the idea behind SoftPeak is to treat it like a startup, to build up your kind of concepts around how we can work smarter, how we can get more time, and how we can leverage the superpowers from tons of different tools, and how we can extend our digital literacy, how we can leverage artificial intelligence, build a second brain, and how we can democratize and make everyone into a potential developer by using low-code, no-code, and citizen development tooling to do more stuff and to be more efficient and to work smarter. So in today's edition, we will focus a little bit around Microsoft 365 and the admin center and how to kind of set it up and what to think about, at least what I thought about when I did this. So I already pre-configured my domain, softpeak.com, to a new Microsoft 365 account. So you can see it here. It's connected to SoftPeak, so it's already configured to me. And I think this is a good idea to kind of have your think about what kind of domain name you would like to have for your tenant. So if you don't really know what Microsoft 365 is all about, I also have another site called almboc.com, which is another kind of project I'm heading. And in this site, there is a pretty good, at least I think so, overview of how the Microsoft 365 is configured. So if you don't really know what Microsoft 365 is a software as a service, a SaaS solution. It's in the cloud. It offers tons of different services. There is a bunch of different services, and you get different services depending on what license plan you have. So there is a bunch of different complexities when it comes to how licensing works and what to think about when you work with the Microsoft licensing. So the basic concept is that Microsoft and Office 365 are basically more or less the same thing. I think Microsoft is transitioning from Office to Microsoft 365 more and more. And it's bundled together in different kind of segments, we can call it. You have a business segment and you have an enterprise segment like this, and you have like educational and governance, government kind of setups as well. So depending on your interests or on your needs, you can pick one of those, and you can also, since it's a cloud service, you can also change and grow into it and kind of like explore. But there is a bunch of different things what's included in the various solutions. I think one of the most common ones is to have like an E3 or maybe an E5 depending on your organizational needs. And if you have like Windows included, Microsoft Windows, the operating system included as well, then you probably have a Microsoft 365 subscription. And if you have like, for example, factory workers or frontline workers or stuff like that, you probably have an F1 for those, more of a cheaper one with less features in it. So the basic concept between this It can also be explored using this pretty neat website, m365maps.com, where you can compare various concepts. So, for example, if I want to compare a standard plan to a premium plan and I want to understand what's included in it, I can put them side by side and I can explore and I can see what's included. I think this is a really good way to understand it, but it can be pretty complex to understand what kind of solution you want for any given time. So depending on your needs, there is a bunch of different approaches to this. But I think the starting point for many people is to have, if I look at this by category section in elmbock.com here, I can see the office applications. I think maybe the obvious starting point is that you maybe want to have some of the office applications like Word, Excel, PowerPoint and stuff like that. You want to, or all of your users to be able to have those kind of possibilities. But maybe you also want to have collaboration pieces in there. So maybe you want to have like in the collaboration section, maybe you want to have stuff like Teams, SharePoint or Yammer, or now it's called the Viva Engage, but still the same, to be able to build communities and have them collaborate. Maybe your focus is more around files and knowledge management. Then you have SharePoint and OneDrive for both enterprise collaboration and personal collaboration, when you want to share something externally. And there's other possibilities with search as well. So you can have a Microsoft Search to be able to find stuff within your organization. So it's a really good way to arrange your information architecture to be able to find things later. That's one thing of being smarter, is to be able to tag stuff and to be able to find stuff later. If you think about like having a second brain, a digital brain that you can tap into to have your knowledge available to you at a later state. And that's really awesome. And also when it comes to video is becoming more and more popular. Stream is moving into SharePoint, so it's a part of SharePoint nowadays. So it's a really good way to having your own organizational kind of YouTube, but for your enterprise instead. And there's also email, and to be able to have more information around people, who is who. There's other concepts as well when it comes to business applications, like the Power Platform. If you want to leverage the power of no-code, low-code structures, you can create stuff in Power Apps and Power Automate to build automations, and also business analysis and to understand what's going on. You can use Power BI, and also having chatbots like Power Virtual Agents. That's also really, really powerful. So the Power Platform is really a really key thing to the success of Microsoft 365. But there's other concepts as well, for example, forms and bookings and Visio stuff. And also if you plan to run projects or automate tasks and you want to be more in control on the processes around projects and tasks, there is a bunch of tooling in there as well. So depending on your needs, from your organizational needs, there is a bit of a trick to be able to balance this kind of need and the proper license to what we have. So for me, when I thought about this, I thought that I wanted to have something in SoftPeak that there is that I can be transparent and show, and it should be clean. The entire environment should be clean, and just focus on a startup called SoftPeak. So I can show and I can demo and I can elaborate around this, and I can show the entire concept around how this actually works and fits together, and kind of build up as this series grows, maybe dive deeper into the various elements and parts of this. Another kind of cool website is this jump to 365.com. I think this is a really good one. It has a periodic table of the Microsoft 365 tooling, where you can kind of like hover over and see various concepts. For example, if I want to see file storage and collaboration, I can see how this is grouped. If I have communities and communication and Outlook, and I can kind of like have an understanding. And I can also click on this one to get a little bit more information from various places on how this actually works, and you can also configure this based on your own kind of needs. I haven't tried it myself, but I think this can be really useful for you to be able to understand, at least from a starting point, what's in the various kind of like added value depending on your licensing needs, to figure out what kind of governance setup you would like for your organization. Especially when starting up a new organization, maybe you don't need all of the complexities immediately, but if you're a large organization already, then maybe you should have a pretty good understanding on the where your organization are in various pieces like this. How are they being used a lot? When it looks at analytics, for example, how is the people using the various services, and how can we drive adoption for various services? And actually, Microsoft has a really good site for this as well. It's called adoption.microsoft.com. It's a really good starting place when you want to think about this, how to have the various products grouped together in various kind of concepts, and also the various solutions, like larger concepts like learning pathways, for example, and those are stuff being built on top of this. So it's not really pure services that you just have as turnkey. Most of the services is actually configurable, more like a platform, so you can adapt it and make it more yours. Especially SharePoint and Teams are platforms that can be really configured to your specific needs and have individual experiences within those services. I kind of like this adoption Microsoft as well, because there is tons of resources and training materials and lots of information pieces that really ties into how the Microsoft 365 services works. And also looking at different personas. It's not so different from the personas I have in mind for SoftPeak as well. It's business users and champions and developers and IT professionals. It's more or less the same kind of personas that I have in mind for SoftPeak that can have an added value of this series that I'm trying to target towards this. There is also the possibility to join the Microsoft 365 developer program, and then you can have your own kind of sandbox solution that you can have for testing purposes, and maybe to develop stuff and to learn how to explore certain things. So in this kind of setup, you get a tenant. So you get a tenant from Microsoft that you can have for a certain amount of time that has E5 licensing. So it has pretty broad licensing concepts and lots of very advanced concepts already installed in it, and you have the full tenant admin privileges on that, and you have it for 90 days, and after that you can also, if you use it, I think it's automatically prolonged. And I have one as well that I will plan to show a little bit of concepts in the coming editions of this series. I will show you a little bit more around how this actually works as well. But it's really neat that you can add like SharePoint sites that's already been pre-configured and concepts. It has many users already existing in it, so you can have show from various perspectives, and you can explore and make sure that the experiences is right for your users. So I recommend, regardless if you're a developer or not, to maybe join this program if you're interested in the Microsoft 365. You should maybe try at least think about joining this kind of concept in order to learn more around how this actually works. So with that, going back to my admin site at SoftPeak, so I have this admin.microsoft.com. It will end up, it will guide you through when you log in. You will be guided to this administration home page. It has lots of information, but I can see I only have one user in my tenant right now. It's me. Henrik, and I only have a couple of licenses. So I have a business, standard business, so I have a pretty low licensing model. But this is the tenant I have here is not a developer tenant. It's my own tenant. I tied this to the domain name as well, so it's configured to softpeak.com. It also has the softpeak.sharepoint.com kind of root domain. So I kind of build on top of the brand, if you like, the SoftPeak kind of branding. And it has only one simple subscription. And when it comes to configuration and how this has been set up, we can see here in the setup, it's a process, so we can see how the setup is being configured. So what I've actually done on this tenant, I haven't configured the MFA yet, but it's a requirement because I'm using also Azure services. So it's a requirement. I will have to do that within the next couple of days as well. But I have also customized it, connected it to my domain, and you can do that. I think you need a bit of a network expertise to do that correctly, but it's a pretty easy process. I find it really intuitive and easy. So you need to configure a couple of DNS records, and if you don't know what that is, then maybe you should ask someone more proficient when it comes to networking, how to configure and how to set up the DNS for your domain if you plan to connect a domain to this. So there's a couple of, you get the guided process when you set this one up. So you can see I have various things here already configured, and this is just a starting point. I haven't changed so much yet. I just changed it to dark mode. I prefer to have it in dark mode than have the light mode. And so in Windows, I like to have the dark theme, if you like, within this. In the left-hand side here, you see this ribbon on top. That's the ribbon that we have on basically all of Microsoft 365 services, but it will shift a little bit. It will have different appearance depending on where you are. And below there, we have this navigation menu. And in this navigation menu, we can see lots of different things and services. We have a couple of them pinned. So if we do in the bottom here, we click on unpin, we see the most important one, depending on your needs and your role when you log in here. I am a tenant administrator, so I have access to everything in the tenant. If you're not the tenant administrator, you might not be able to see all of this, but then I recommend you to test it out in a developer tenant, and you can see what everything within the tenant, and you can explore and check out a couple of stuff. So just briefly, there's a bunch of different settings, and I think it's a good idea to maybe walk through a bit of them and to show what's in the various boxes. But as a starting point, one of the first things I like to do is to go into organizational settings and maybe hit a certain set of boxes within the organizational profile section. So there's a bunch of settings for the various services in here as well, and you have security and privacy settings, but you also have this organizational profile settings. And I think one of the first things you want to do is maybe to brand it a little bit to fit your organizational needs, and that's one of the next step. But before that, I wanted to highlight this release preference option. That's one of the first thoughts I typically have when I encounter a new tenant. What's the release, target release for that tenant? There's two different options here basically. So what you have is like you have a standard release for everyone. Then if you get new services and new updates to services, if you follow the standard release pattern, you get releases later. If you're in the targeted release, you're more in the inner circle and you get things sooner, but you're also maybe experiencing certain errors or bugs or whatever if you're in the targeted release for everyone. So I wouldn't recommend it for any larger organization, but if you're a startup and you're kind of like a bit more progressive and you want to experience the things faster, and you prefer a faster cadence of things coming to you, I think I recommend this one. Otherwise, you can always have the targets release for selected users. Then you can pinpoint certain users that you know are the guinea pigs, if you like, that can try new things faster or sooner than other ones. Going back to the organizational settings here and the organization profile, we're going to look at the custom themes. So if I click this themes button, I can see that there is a possibility with a plus sign to add a theme. I can also check this supporting documentation here and I can see how to customize a Microsoft 365 theme for my organization. And we have this kind of concept here that we can see most organizations have some kind of colors that they prefer to use. And some organizations also have the possibility to have both a light theme and a dark theme, depending on the user's preference. I personally prefer a darker theme. It's more light on my eyes. I prefer it a lot when I stare at the screens. And sometimes you want to have the users to choose between various themes. So you can actually have multiple themes depending on various scenarios that you might have for your users. So going back to my other screen here, I can add a theme. If I add a theme, I have the default theme. I can override this default theme. So I can prevent users from overriding and having their own theme. So I can have maybe a high contrast themes for people with maybe low eyesight. Maybe they need a high contrast theme. So I wouldn't recommend this to prevent all of the users from having their own. And I can maybe show the user's display name, and I can upload a logo. If I want to upload a logo, I should think about the light theme and the dark theme kind of logo and where they end up on the click on the logo. I will show you that a little bit later on where they click up to come to. The default one is the SharePoint starting page, but it will switch a little bit depending on if I want them to go somewhere else. And then I can have a couple of colors, and I can have a color of the navigation bar, and I can have the colors of text and icons. So it should maybe be a contrasting color of the text, and for example, I can see a darker black background, and I can have the text in white or the icons in white on top of that. And I can also have an accent color that really pops out depending on the colors I use. So this is the 3-point configuration that we can have. So now I will add my personal theme. How do you do it then? Let's say I have my organizational colors, but I don't have them handy. So maybe I can borrow them from the website. So I can go here and I can press the Windows key and Shift and S at the same time. I have this kind of snipping tool. I can just highlight a certain section of the screen like this. So I have it in memory. So it's copied to the clipboard, and from the clipboard I can basically paste it. And then maybe I want to paste it into MS Paint. I can press the Start button here and MS Paint. Just type it in MS Paint like that, and you can start the Microsoft Paint application. And here I can press Ctrl V to paste in the image. I can hit the pen marker here, and I can see what kind of color I'm highlighting right now. So I can use this color picker tool. I can maybe take a gray one here. You see that it's changing the color up there. So maybe I can change it a little bit here and see if I want to have the orange color like that. I can see that it's changing the orange color. So now I have the color 1 is orange. I can click this color section here. I can see the hex code for this. I can copy this hex code, and I can go back into the admin center, and maybe I want to change the accent color here to my hexadecimal color. You see that it's kind of complaining a little bit to me here, saying doesn't meet minimum color contrast ratio of 451. So this can be annoying if you have problem seeing the various contrasting colors. So maybe you should check with if you have someone in your organization that actually knows more around the colors and what type of colors to use and where, then maybe you should ask them for proper guidance. But for my purposes here, I will stick with this orange color here, and I like this kind of black navigation bar with a white color. So I would just press save, and now I can see here it's saved. And I don't have a logo yet. I will add that in a moment here. But I have changed the color. So now I have the color, even though it's complaining a little bit to me. So if I go back to my site here and I click on this one and I open up SharePoint here. So I open up SharePoint in a new tab. You see the top bar up here. Now the top bar up in SharePoint has this kind of contrasting color. When I hover over it, you see this orange one, and it's all black. But it reads SharePoint up here, and I don't have an organization logo yet, and that is the next thing we will add. How do I go about this? I can go to my SoftPeak website, and I can maybe grab an icon of here. I can take this one. This seems to be a bigger one, so I can go into this specific blog post and I can save this image as. I can see this is a pretty big image, but I can save this one. And I can also grab a smaller one like this. So I can save an image like that, and I can store this one as well. If I go back now into my downloads folder, I can see that I have one is 25 KB and one is 2 KB. I don't think that SharePoint or Microsoft would allow me to have this bigger one. So if I try to open this one, I see that the image size should be more or less than something else. I can use this Microsoft Paint, and I can resize an image. So I can open up my image here, and I can go to the downloads folder, and I can maybe try and make this one smaller by hitting this resize skew, and maybe set this to, I don't know, 15% maybe, something like that. It becomes pretty small. Or I can just use the other one that I had here as well. So I had in the downloads folder, I had this already smaller one. I think this is really good to use this one because it's transparent background in comparison to the other one that it has a white background. So I prefer to have a transparent background if I change the color of the background then. So I can just upload, and I take this other one, this smaller one. It seems to be fitting pretty nicely there. So I can press save, and I can go back to my SharePoint site, and I can refresh this one, and I should see now I have a really nice SoftPeak logo on top there. From here, of course, I want to change this SoftPeak logo into an SVG, because I also wanted this to appear down in the search field here, and I will connect this at some point to the Microsoft search experience. So I will change this into an SVG, scalable vector graphics, and I will also change the URL to a communication site, because right now it's going to the SharePoint landing page, and that's not where I want it to come. I wanted to point to the SharePoint communication page, and I will also experiment a little bit around how to build up a proper communication site that should be your intranet kind of starting point for your organization. So we will look at how we can brand communication site, and I will also show you how to add an SVG to this and how to connect it all together, and also Viva Connections, how to kind of brand it into the Microsoft Teams experience, so we can have it inside Microsoft Teams as well. But that's all coming episodes of this kind of experiment I'm running now for SoftPeak, and I think I would be very interested to hear any comments or any thoughts that you might have on coming episodes, and things you would like me to kind of like explore around with, and maybe experiment with and see what we can achieve with this, because it's not all about me and what I'm kind of interested in. I also want to be real about this, and how to maybe share some real experience, and how to share some proper build up of this. So with all the intent of this kind of SoftPeak startup experience. It's all about how we can work smarter and get more time. I think it is a two-way kind of lane. It's not just me teaching around this. I'm really interested in learning from your experience as well to grow this into something. So if you do find this really interesting, of course, hit that like button and subscribe and so on. But you can also go to softpeak.com and hit this newsletter button up here, and you can subscribe to my coming newsletter as well. There's not much here yet, but I'm thinking maybe we can explore this together a little bit, and I will grow this kind of concept into something bigger, hopefully, than it is right now. So with that said, I thank you for watching today's little episode, and of course you can always find other stuff that I produce as well all over the internet, I guess. So until next time, take care.